the Battle of Guadalcanal, a name etched in the history of World War II. This brutal campaign, fought in the Solomon Islands, would become a turning point in the Pacific War. For 6 long months, from August 1942 to February 1943, Japanese and Allied forces clashed in a battle for supremacy. This essay explores the battle from the perspective of the Japanese, delving into their ambitions, struggles, and the ultimate impact of their defeat. The Solomon Islands, a seemingly insignificant chain of islands, held strategic importance. Japan recognized their value in controlling shipping lanes and disrupting Allied supply lines to Australia. Guadalcanal, the largest of these islands, became a focal point. Its airfield, later named Henderson Field, would become a key objective for both sides. The battle for Guadalcanal was more than just a fight for territory. It was a battle for survival. Both sides poured resources and manpower into the struggle, each determined to claim victory. The outcome would have far-reaching consequences, shaping the course of the Pacific War and ultimately influencing the outcome of World War II. For the Japanese, Guadalcanal represented an opportunity to expand their empire and secure vital resources. For the Allies, it was a chance to halt Japan's advance and turn the tide of the war. The stage was set for a bloody confrontation, one that would test the limits of human endurance and forever alter the landscape of the Pacific. Japan's entry into World War II was driven by a desire for expansion and a quest for resources. The island nation, with its limited natural resources, sought to establish a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. This sphere of influence would encompass vast areas of Southeast Asia, rich in raw materials and strategic locations. Guadalcanal, situated within this coveted region, became a prime target. Its capture would allow Japan to disrupt Allied supply lines to Australia, a key Allied staging ground. Furthermore, it would provide a base for further expansion into the South Pacific, threatening Allied lines of communication and potentially isolating Australia. The early Japanese victories in Southeast Asia and the Pacific had emboldened the nation. The attack on Pearl Harbor, while a tactical success, had failed to cripple the American Pacific Fleet. Nevertheless, Japanese confidence remained high. Guadalcanal, they believed, would solidify their hold on the region and pave the way for a negotiated peace with the Allies. However, the Japanese had underestimated the resolve of the United States. The attack on Pearl Harbor had awakened a sleeping giant, and America, fueled by a desire for revenge and a determination to defend its interests, was mobilizing its vast industrial and military might. The stage was set for a clash of titans, a battle that would determine the fate of the Pacific. Japan's initial strategy for Guadalcanal was straightforward: seize the island quickly and fortify it against inevitable counterattacks. Their confidence stemmed from their string of victories in the Pacific and their belief in the superiority of their naval and air power. The Imperial Japanese Army, seasoned from campaigns in China and Southeast Asia, would spearhead the ground invasion. Their objective was to secure the island, including the crucial airfield under construction by the Allies. Meanwhile, the Imperial Japanese Navy, with its powerful battleships and aircraft carriers, would provide cover and interdict any Allied attempts to reinforce or retake the island. The Japanese, however, made a critical miscalculation. They underestimated the strategic importance the Allies placed on Guadalcanal. The United States, recognizing the threat posed by a Japanese airfield on the island, was already mobilizing a powerful force to contest its capture. Furthermore, the Japanese High Command, operating under the assumption that the Americans were demoralized after Pearl Harbor, believed they would face limited resistance. This misjudgment would have dire consequences. As the Japanese soon discovered, the Americans, far from being demoralized, were eager to engage and avenge their losses. The initial Japanese landings on Guadalcanal in July 1942 caught the Allied defenders by surprise. Outnumbered and outgunned, the American and Australian forces, primarily consisting of Marines, were forced to withdraw. The Japanese, seemingly on the verge of an easy victory, quickly occupied Tulagi, a nearby island, and began constructing an airfield on Guadalcanal. This airfield, soon to be named Henderson Field by the Americans, became the focal point of the battle. Its capture would give Japan control of the skies above Guadalcanal and the surrounding waters, allowing them to interdict Allied shipping and reinforce their own troops. The Americans, recognizing its strategic importance, were determined to wrest control of the airfield from the Japanese. What followed was a brutal back-and-forth struggle for Henderson Field. The Japanese launched a series of determined attacks, attempting to dislodge the tenacious American defenders. The fighting was fierce and unrelenting, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The dense jungles and unforgiving terrain of Guadalcanal transformed the battle into a savage, close-quarters fight. testing the limits of human endurance. The Japanese, despite their initial successes, soon faced a formidable foe in the US Marines. The Marines, known for their tenacity and fighting spirit, refused to relinquish their hold on Henderson Field. The battle for Guadalcanal was far from over, and the Japanese, once confident of a swift victory, found themselves locked in a grueling war of attrition. Section 5. The Tokyo Express and the Attrition War. As the battle for Guadalcanal intensified, a logistical nightmare unfolded. The Japanese, operating far from their supply lines, struggled to maintain a steady flow of reinforcements and supplies to their troops on the island. The Americans, with their shorter supply lines and growing industrial might, were better positioned to sustain their war effort. The Japanese Navy, attempting to counter the growing American presence, engaged in a series of daring nighttime supply runs, dubbed the Tokyo Express by the Americans. These runs, while successful in delivering some supplies, were often disrupted by American air and naval attacks, resulting in heavy losses for the Japanese. The battle for Guadalcanal gradually transformed into a war of attrition. The Japanese, unable to dislodge the Americans from Henderson Field and facing mounting casualties, found themselves outmatched. Their initial strategy of a quick victory had failed, and they were now locked in a protracted struggle against a determined and well-supplied enemy. The Americans, bolstered by reinforcements and supplies, gradually gained the upper hand. Their air power, operating from Henderson Field, began to take a toll on Japanese shipping and troop movements. The Japanese, facing constant air attacks, dwindling supplies, and mounting casualties, were forced into a defensive posture. Section 6. The tenacity of the Japanese soldier. Stories from the front lines. Throughout the brutal Guadalcanal campaign, the Japanese soldier demonstrated unwavering courage and tenacity. Letters and diaries paint a vivid picture of the hardships endured and commitment to duty. Corporal Eiji Toyada, a machine gunner, fought with determination despite constant shelling. His final letter expressed pride in serving his emperor, even facing certain death. Private Taro Suzuki, a medic, described the horrors of Guadalcanal in his diary. Despite the horrors, Suzuki's entries reflect compassion and commitment to duty. These stories humanize the Japanese soldier, showing their sacrifices and dedication. Section 7. The Tide Turns, America's Growing Might. As the months wore on, the balance of power at Guadalcanal shifted inexorably in favor of the Americans. The United States, its industrial might fully mobilized, poured men and material into the fight. Reinforcements arrived in a steady stream, bolstering the weary American defenders and tipping the scales against the increasingly isolated Japanese. American air power, operating from the now secure Henderson Field, began to dominate the skies above Guadalcanal. Japanese supply lines, already strained, were further disrupted by constant air attacks. The Tokyo Express, while still a threat, could no longer sustain the Japanese forces on the island. The arrival of new American warships, including aircraft carriers, further cemented American naval dominance. The Japanese Navy, weakened by losses in previous engagements, was unable to challenge American control of the waters around Guadalcanal. The Japanese, once confident in their naval superiority, now found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered. The tide had turned. The Japanese, facing overwhelming American firepower, dwindling supplies, and mounting casualties, were forced to confront the grim reality of their situation. Their hold on Guadalcanal was slipping, and their hopes for a decisive victory were fading with each passing day. Section 8. Retreat from Guadalcanal, a costly defeat. By late 1942, the Japanese High Command recognized the futility of continuing the fight for Guadalcanal. The island, once seen as a stepping stone to further expansion, had become a costly quagmire. The decision was made to withdraw, to cut their losses and regroup. The evacuation of Japanese forces from Guadalcanal, codenamed Operation KE, was a testament to the bravery and skill of the Japanese Navy. Under the cover of darkness and facing constant harassment from American aircraft, Japanese destroyers ferried thousands of starving and exhausted troops from the island. However, the evacuation did not come without a heavy price. Many Japanese soldiers, too weak or wounded to evacuate, were left behind. Those who did manage to escape carried with them the physical and psychological scars of their ordeal. The retreat from Guadalcanal marked a turning point in the Pacific War. The Japanese, for the first time, had been decisively defeated in a major campaign. Their aura of invincibility was shattered, and the initiative shifted firmly to the Allies. The road to victory would be long and arduous, but the tide had turned. Section 9. Legacy of a brutal battle, shifting tides of war. The Battle of Guadalcanal, a brutal 6-month struggle, marked a turning point in World War II. For Japan, it began a costly retreat, shattering their sense of invincibility. The defeat had a profound psychological impact on Japan. For the Allies, it was a crucial victory, proving Japan was not invincible. The victory boosted Allied morale and shifted the tides of war.